Welcome into PressBox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles of PressBox at PressBoxOnline.com, and want to remind you that these Zooms on Monday nights now are brought to you by the Costas Inn. Costas Inn, not just a great place to go eat, but a great place to get carry out. Costas Inn at 4100 North Point Boulevard. Ross Grimsley is with me as always on Monday, along with our favorite ESPN commentator and reporter and analyst, Tim Kurkjian. Guys, how are you tonight?
Wonderful.
I'm great, Stan. I'm great, Ross. Good to see you guys.
Great, always pleasure, buddy.
Good to see you. We wouldn't have had you on again had baseball been playing, because I don't like to interfere with you being out visiting about 20 different fields by now in spring training. Tell us where you think, Tim, we are right now in these labor negotiations.
Well, we have to use a word from the people involved yesterday, and it's a bad word. It's deadlocked. And I'm not sure where we go from deadlocked. I mean, it's now possible, I'm not suggesting it's going to happen, that the owners declare an impasse, then they implement the last offer that they made and say, all right, this is what we're going to do. And then the union has the right to say, well, we're not going along with that. And then this ends up in the courts. If it ends up in the courts, then we're really in trouble. Now, again, I'm not saying we've gotten that far. I'm sure we haven't. But when you hear the word deadlocked, that's really bad. And I am deeply concerned about the 2022 season. I'm sure we'll play this year. I just don't know when we're going to start. And every single day that goes by, more damage is done to the game. I mean, I feel for so many people involved in this game, but look, I don't want to be corny about this. I love this game, and this game has taken a beating right now publicly, and who knows how much more of a beating it's going to take with every day that this lockout lasts.
Before I turn you over to Ross for a couple of questions, let me ask you one thing about what you just said. If the owners voted to go that route, to implement a continuation under the same agreement, the players could technically start a season and then declare, if we're not settled by August 1st, we're going to strike, correct?
Well, if we start the season, then the players are going to have the right to strike. Yes. Yeah. So again, I don't think we're going to get to an impasse implementation. I don't think we're going to courts. I think they're far apart right now and they're deadlocked. But I had someone tell me 2 months ago, look, the owners are going to do what the owners are going to do. And if they start on May the 1st and we get 140 games in, they're going to get all their TV money from that. Yep. And we're going to have some tremendous postseason, as we always do. And they're really going to get paid for that. So they're just trying to get everything that they can right now. And this is what the guy told me, potentially to say, all right, we missed on the players, but we can always have May the 1st that we can fall back on. I think they misread the resolve of the players here. And I think they just pushed them around in 2016 and said, we can do it again. And they found out that they can't.
Ross, I know you got a couple for Tim.
Yeah, Timmy, I know you think the owners are trying to bust the union. That's always been a thing that's happened. Are the players asking for too much? I mean, there's a $10 billion, $11 billion being generated by baseball, and more is coming in the foreseeable future with all revenue sharing, gambling, and all this other stuff. What do you think about those two things?
Yeah, I think the players are to blame in a small way in all of this, meaning there's blame to go everywhere here, but I blame the owners much more than I blame the players. The players did indeed get younger according to some of the proposals. Younger players are going to get paid more. That was a great thing. The bonus pool for pre-arbitration is really important. Minimum salary went up. They got some concessions here. There's no way around that. But I still don't think this is a great deal for the players, and therefore they're going to hold out for something better. The owners, it's been explained to me, they can miss a paycheck. They have other businesses. They have pay more money than the players do. And I'm not going to be totally defending the players here, but there's this misconception that every player is a millionaire, that every player is making $5 million a year, when that simply is not the case. And so we have to factor that in. So I think the players are, again, saying, you have not given us a competitive offer yet. When you do, we will agree to it. And I think ultimately the owners will, with the closer we get to, all right, we're going to lose some TV money if we don't get an agreement. That's where I think we are right now, fellas. But this is a very, very confusing and confounding negotiation.
Right. With the competitive balance tax or revenue sharing or whatever you want to call it, where that money is supposed to go to the salaries or should go to the salaries of the small market teams, that seems to be, from what I hear, one of the big stumbling blocks with this whole thing.
Yeah, the competitive balance tax, which is also called the luxury tax, is, and we've been told this kind of all along from those in the know, this is the number one problem with the two sides. They're still not close on this. Fay Vincent, the former commissioner, said the other day, look, the luxury tax is a salary cap. Now, you can debate that all you like, but if we are keeping teams from going over that, just look how few teams have gone over the luxury tax in the last few years. It's remarkably low because they don't want to pay an enormous penalty for every dollar they go over that. And therefore, it's acting in some degree as a salary cap. And that's why the players are fighting it. That's why the owners are fighting it. And until we get that done, I'm not sure anything else, and there are a million other things going on, I'm not sure anything else really compares to the importance of coming to an agreement about the competitive balance tax.
Right.
Timmy, it seems to me that it doesn't get talked about a lot in the mainstream media or even any level of the media. But one of the key things I see going on, I read an article by Travis Sawchuk about 2 or 3 weeks ago, where he broke down how baseball over the last 12 or 13 years has taken the average the average career length from 4.6 or 4.7 down to about 3.6. And that might not seem like a big number, but it's fairly significant. And I think what it does is it explains how there's this mass of the player population that big league baseball, the owners view as really interchangeable, and they don't let players, they'll non-tender guys and they get them out there. And then suddenly there's just this mass of players that they aren't going to offer big money to. Do you see this as a systematic attempt to sort of shorten players' careers and just make a cheaper population of pool players, so to speak? And I know that was a long-winded way to answer that question.
Yeah, it's a really difficult spot. Again, in paying the younger players a higher minimum, getting them more arbitration rights, more money through arbitration is a really good thing. The upper tier players, the real high players, are still getting paid. I mean, sure. Max Scherzer's making $43 million a year. The last 5 years or so has been the middle tier guys who are getting left out of this. The 32-year-old free agent who's never been to free agency before because he didn't get to the big leagues until he was 25. Now he's got his big payday coming up, and the owners are saying, and in some cases rightfully so, we're not going to pay a 32-year-old when we can pay a 22-year-old way less than what we'd have to give him and get at least a similar player. And to me, this is part of the problem in this negotiation. People have told me, yes, it's that middle class free agent that is being left out of the equation again. So that's part of the concern here is the players are saying, yeah, look, the big guys are getting paid and now the younger guys are getting paid, but there are an enormous number of guys in the middle who are going to get left out.
Yeah, I don't know how I stated that question, whether I stated it well enough, but it really seems like they've gone to the extent where they don't want almost $3 or $4 million players now. They then sort of break them down through not offering them arbitration, where they're $1.5 million to $2 million. And then they go, well, is this guy at 2 million or $1.7 million? Is he really as good as the guy at 550 or 650? And they seem to be shaving those guys and turning them. That's why I think I see more and more American players trying Korea and Japan. It just seems like they've really used the analytics to debate what a player's value is, and they've sort of cheapened them.
Yeah,
Well, they've devalued it. Devalued the player,
devalued
basically.
them. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. And they've devalued Ross's position, the starting pitcher, more than anybody. We are limiting their innings pitched, obviously. We're going with openers, we're going with relievers starting games, and we're telling our pitchers, 100 pitches, 5 innings, then you're going to go. We want to keep you healthy. But there's also another side that some people believe by limiting innings and limiting wins and limiting great players, you don't have to pay a guy who only throws 150 innings as opposed to someone who throws 250.
Right.
And that's what concerns me on a bigger level, is that sometimes it makes you think, are they suppressing salaries by making every player the same? Is it better to sign 2 inexpensive players to play second base rather than pay somebody $18 million to play second base, and you're getting similar production? It makes sense on a certain level, but this is part of what the players are pointing out.
I'll just say
one of the things, Tim, that I've seen, and I think we've all seen, the elimination of the veteran player, basically, not only at the major league level, minor league level, coaching. You see these guys being, carted away, and you're getting people, especially at the lower minor league level, where these entry level kids coming into rookie ball, low A and stuff, they're being instructed by people that have never played the game at the professional level. Again, I think that's wrong, because it's the foundation of a lot of these guys, and you see it now. They're getting to the big leagues really quick, and they don't know how to play. But with that being said, you just kind of go, what do you? I mean, they're trying to cut corners even at the minor league level, and you kind of go, what are you doing? Do you see that?
Yeah, our most veteran managers, scouts, general managers, and players are being left out of the equation also, because we feel like with our new analytics, we found a new way and a better way to evaluate and to value players. Again, a couple years ago, I was in spring training right before COVID hit, and I had a veteran catcher who was trying to make a team for the last time tell me, and he was not pleased, but he said, I'm being taught a new way to catch in the major leagues, and I've caught in the big leagues for 15 years. And then he looked at me and he said, and our catching instructor who's teaching me has never caught before.
Yeah.
Now, just think about that. Think about
Sad.
that for a second. That is a troublesome situation. Now, again, we've got some new blood teaching the game that is really good and really important. But to not value the guy who played in the big leagues for 10 years and he's on your coaching staff, I don't think it's a complete coincidence that the Braves won the World Series last year, and the majority of their guys on their coaching staff are former players and not just cup of coffee guys. Walt Weiss is their bench coach. I mean, and he's a shortstop. So when Dansby Swanson has trouble on that ball to his left, or has trouble with this or that, he can go to Walt Weiss or Ron Washington, 2 big league shortstops, and say, help me with this. He doesn't need a set of statistics. He doesn't need any video. He needs somebody who watches him every day to say, let me show you what you should be doing here.
And not only that, but taking you out on the field and actually doing stuff, which they've gotten away from now, especially at the lower levels. The other thing we're talking, the veteran player, I don't think the people now that are running baseball understand how the veteran player in the big leagues, your backup catcher in some instances, maybe your third or fourth outfield, how important they are, the older pitcher on the 10th guy on the staff or whatever, how important these guys are at teaching the game to some of the younger players. That's being eliminated.
Right. And again, I don't want to go back in time too far or make this too provincial, but I know that Flanny and Scott McGregor and Ross Grimsley and Storm Davis and Mike Boddicker, when they weren't pitching, they were sitting next to Jim Palmer watching the game, because Jim Palmer could show them, look what he's doing there, and look what he did the last at bat, and look what he's doing during this at bat. So when Mike Flanagan would sit next to Jim Palmer, he would know they're facing, say, the Twins again tomorrow night. Now he knows what that guy likes to do when he gets ahead or behind in the count. It's because he watched the game with a veteran player. I'm so worried that we've gotten away from actually watching the games, because after our bats, after our innings, we run down into the clubhouse and look at the video of my at bat, which I understand can be helpful, but I would rather watch the next at bat. I would rather watch what Max Scherzer, how he pitches the next guy. Maybe that will teach you more than running down and missing part of the game to go watch your own at bat.
I tell you, it's so important, even during a game, when you're in the game as a pitcher, that those guys are there, that you can ask different questions during the game, that they're there to give their opinion and help, which is really, I learned that a lot in Cincinnati with bench, and the pitching coaches and the Pat Corrales. Some guys, Pat Corrales was a backup catcher, but he had a lot of valuable information, and you just don't see that now. And again, just like you said, I think that's something that's really going to hurt the players, that could really benefit them.
Tim, a lot of people, go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted you.
No, go ahead.
Ross makes a good point. Talking about good faith and bargaining in good faith. I'm not, people that have listened to me for 25, 30 years on the radio and read my columns, they'll know that for the most part, I've always defended more the players than the owners. But this time around, the owners seem to be bargaining in such bad faith. It seems like every time they start to meet for a sustained period of time, something new is being dragged into the negotiations that I haven't heard for 3 months or 4 months. I never heard it. And all of a sudden, in the seventh or eighth inning of these negotiations, to have the ability for the commissioner to institute rule changes much quicker without having to go through any kind of year-long study or something like that. Where did that become so important all of a sudden when you're talking about core economics?
Yeah, well, again, there's blame to go all around here. But to me, one of the big differences is the owners themselves. Again, when I first started covering baseball, Jerry Hoffberger owned the Orioles, all right? And it was like a family-owned situation. This was his job, was to own the team. Bud Selig was the owner of the Brewers when I first started covering baseball, late 70s, early 80s. And I'm telling you, every time my team, the Orioles, the Rangers, would go through Milwaukee, Bud Selig, the owner of the Brewers, would walk into the clubhouse and talk to the visiting writers. He knew us all by name. Can you imagine that happening today? It's inconceivable that could happen today. So I think the construct of the owners,
they barely know their local writers now.
Right. You never see the owners around. Yeah. Rob Manfred speaks for the owners. We don't see owners coming out and really explaining their side. And I'm sorry, they have other business interests in their lives, and good for them. It's not just baseball, like the O'Malley family was all about baseball. It just doesn't work that way anymore. And I understand that's, I guess, what progress is about. Revenues are up. It's a $10 billion business. But I think when you don't have an emotional investment in the team, I just don't think you care as much about the game as you should. And right now, we need owners, players, and everyone else caring about the game. And I just don't see enough of that.
You know, what's depressing to me as a baseball fan is that these owners and players, they're not discussing or debating things that are really that relevant to the way the game is played. How are you going to put more action back into the game? It's all about dollars and cents, seemingly.
Yeah, and that's really troublesome. And they have rule changes now that have been discussed. A
Mhm.
pitch timer, pitch clock,
Yep.
14 seconds with no one on base, 19. And I'm all in favor of that. Ross can disagree, but I think
No,
it's worth a try. The eliminating the shift. Mark Teixeira has convinced me that trying to eliminate the shift might do some good. It
Yeah.
might get rid of some of the homers, some of the strikeouts, some of the walks. But the problem is these rule changes, which make sense, are all tied to economic changes also. So we'll give you this, but we're going to need this money back in return. And if the goal is to make the game better and more interesting, we shouldn't have what I consider important rule changes tied to economic conditions.
You know, it seems, Tim, that's the way our Congress has been operating for a couple hundred years, where they want to pass a serious piece of legislation and they got to throw in all the pork, and all that. So maybe baseball's just catching up to the way we do our things in this country. Ross, you got a couple more for Tim?
yeah.
we'll-
One of the things, you look at what attendance has been down the last 4 years or so, and the people that are really suffering are the fans, and that is so. The communities down here in Florida, the communities in Arizona losing money, depending on depending on spring training. What can Major League Baseball do? Baseball at one time was the sport of America. It's not that way now, I don't think. What can baseball do to get the fans back in the stands?
Well, obviously they can reach an agreement tomorrow. That will get
Right.
things really going. They did donate a lot of money to all the workers who depend on money from baseball, working their jobs, who aren't going to get paid because there are no concessions or tickets or anything else. So that was a good thing that both sides gave some money and said, all right, this will help. It's certainly not enough. But I just worry that they don't recognize how much of that damage is being done here. And we need to get back on the field as quickly as possible. And I just don't think there's that sense of urgency that there really needs to be.
Yeah, go ahead, Stan.
All right. Timmy, before we let you go, got to ask you we could talk for 2 more hours and not solve the problems that are at that negotiating table. But one of the things that they have to fit into all of this is how they're going to sign, what is it, a couple hundred free agents over a 10-day or 2-week period, get them into camp and all that. Do you think the process of baseball is there going to be time enough to get all this accomplished?
Yeah, they're going to have to set aside 3 weeks to a month for spring training.
Yep.
And during that time, those 200 free agents are going to be looking for jobs. And there are huge names out there, from Freddie Freeman to Trevor Story to Carlos Correa to Clayton Kershaw. Those guys have to find homes. And yes, it might be wildly exciting that we have 2-3 major signings every day for 2 weeks. The problem is, and this is what worries me, and I'm really selfish about this, I love spring training because it's so slow paced. You get a chance to really sit back and evaluate your team. And this is going to be, no matter when it starts, there's going to be nothing slow about spring training. Maybe it's going to be more exciting and we won't have to watch PFP all day because we're chasing where Freddie Freeman's going to go. But I actually enjoy watching PFP. I enjoy the lazy nature of spring training because it gives you a chance to get yourself and your mind ready for the regular season. And we're not going to have that. And imagine teams trying to put things together in 3 weeks when they have to add 5 premium players. Like when I look at the Dodgers, for instance, it would be something I would do in the offseason to say, all right, well, let me just examine what the Dodgers have right now. But what the Dodgers have now is
It's
going to
not
be
what they're going
completely different in 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
what's the point of me spending 3 hours in my house today going over the Dodger roster when I realize this is a waste of time because they're going to have 5 more players in 2 weeks after the lockout ends.
It's pretty clear that Tony Clark has kind of survived a rough negotiation the last time. He seems to have some swagger and power amongst his union. The other side of this, how do you think Rob Manfred is going to be remembered for this? Is this going to bypass his assertions that he's the guy that made 4 deals and kept baseball playing for 26 years without any labor unrest, or has this permanently damaged him?
Well, it's going to permanently damage him. And yes, he was a great negotiator for labor deals. But the big difference, and this is obvious, he was working solely for the owners. The commissioner technically is hired by the owners. And if you don't support the owners and you go towards the players, I mean, Faye Vincent did that and ended up getting fired. What I'm saying is, it doesn't make any sense to me that Rob Manfred or any commissioner can be hired by the owners and then work for the owners and yet have the players' interest in mind and have the best interest in baseball in mind. You tell me how any commissioner gets that done in an easy fashion. Go ask Bud Selig how difficult these negotiations were when he did them. They're impossible. Go ask anyone that has been through this. So I'm not saying Rob Manfred should not be blasted. I just don't think he should be blasted this hard. I mean, he has taken an enormous beating. And again, the other thing about 94, 95, fellas, and this is really big, there was no social media back then.
Yeah.
Everyone has a voice. We've got players coming out and say Manfred has to go. That wasn't happening in 1995. So social media, as important as it can be, can also be mildly destructive in a case where there's too much screaming. We need to get in a room quietly and get this done.
I know this doesn't help solve anything, but when you look at the negotiations to arrange the rules of engagement for the 2020 season, and Rob Manfred was the commissioner of baseball, saw how contentious they were, what could he have done different since then to have avoided this? Because it looks almost like he just put a blinkers on and never even attempted to get a deal done in 18, 20 months.
Yeah, that would have been really helpful for somebody to get together and say, look, storm clouds are coming in December of 2021. We have to get something in place before then. Michael Weiner, with help of the union, with help from Rob Manfred of the owners, they got a couple deals done and no one even knew they were talking.
Right.
But the problem is that the distrust and the dislike between the two sides, reminds me of 81, the strike that I covered. God, that was awful. And it reminds me of 94, 95. There was a lot of hate and distrust there, and similar to today. And that's a really bad sign.
Well, I'm just glad we could get through close to a half hour with you, Tim, without you needing to duck off. But I think we're going to start to see some progress, as you suggested, as soon as we get close enough to them really losing some money. So I think that May 1st date of starting games sounds about right to me.
Yeah.
I hope you're right. I hope I'm right. And I hope the next time we do this show, we're talking about play on the field, because let's face it, guys, that's all anybody really cares about are the games. And without the games, we don't have anything.
Kimmy, give me 3 storylines that do excite you about the 2022 season, fingers crossed, but 3 storylines that excite you.
Well, I'm really interested to see what the Mets are going to do after the lockout, but what
Yep.
they did before the lockout. And now they have former Oriole manager Buck Showalter, who I spoke to today. Trust me, and you guys don't need to be told this, he is all over this. Okay. He's got, and yet all he needs now are the players to show up because he is ready to go. So I think they are a really interesting team in a division where it's a winnable situation. I also can't wait to see what Shohei Ohtani is going to do as an encore for what he did last year. Can he possibly be that great again on both sides of the ball? I think he can. I think he's that good and that athletic. And then, I mean, I think we have to keep our eye on the Oakland A's. I keep being told that they might be the team that starts to really unload some players. I mean, if Matt Olson goes and Matt Chapman, which I don't think both Matts are going, but if they trade a couple of starting pitchers and they trade a MVP to be Matt Olson out of first base, and where does he go?
Yep.
On top of all the free agent stuff, I think the A's are one team we really have to keep our eyes on.
All right. He's Tim Kurkjian from ESPN, an old friend of Ross's and mine, and you continue to do a great job with ESPN, Tim, and congrats again on the Hall of Fame.
Well, thanks, fellas. I enjoyed it. And again, I wish we had something more fun to talk about, but right now we don't.
All right.
Thanks, buddy.
We remind you, we've been brought to you by the Costas Inn, not just a great place to go eat, but a great place to pick up your carry out or your curbside, located at 4100 North Point Boulevard. I'll be back Thursday night with Gary Stein, and our guests will be Andy Dolich and Marty Conway as we look at the business of baseball and whether or not it's been damaged. We'll see you then. Thanks again to Tim Kurkjian and Ross Grimsley.